I'm BNEWS Entertainment Reporter Chris Flaherty, and welcome to this BNEWS Entertainment Buzz. Lauren Hennessy, a member of the BHS Class of 2007, recently directed an episode of The Unicorn, a CBS sitcom starring Walton Goggins as a recently widowed father of two daughters, navigating life back on the dating scene. Hennessy and I spoke on Zoom to discuss her work on the show and her path from Burlington to Hollywood. Here is our discussion.
So first off, just tell me a little about your background. I know you graduated from Burlington High, but where did you go to college? What did you do after college? What were some of your first post-grad jobs?
Yeah, I did my bachelor's at Union College in upstate New York. I was a biology major there, and I played on the women's basketball team there. And I thought I was going to be pre-med. Loved biology, was very into it, but I kind of kept gravitating toward sort of media in the classroom versus necessarily studying biology. I had a lovely professor there who was very into sort of bringing learning that maybe you couldn't experience in the classroom via media, which I thought was interesting. And so after college, I spent a year, I moved up to Colorado and skied and bartended and had some fun for a year, and decided to apply to film school. And so I applied to schools that had wildlife documentary filmmaking. To me, that sort of bridged the gap. Filmmaking wasn't something that I immediately kind of thought I could do. It felt out of reach. And so those two things sort of connected for me. And within about a week of being at American University is where I ended up enrolling in film school. I got a master's at American in 2014. Within about a week or two, I changed concentrations to screenwriting and was more interested in sort of narrative filmmaking there. And then while I was there, I got an internship at Showtime. I just blindly applied through their sort of, HR portal and got lucky, and interned in development there. So learned about sort of the whole process of creating TV from sort of the pitch all the way through their episodic work. And I spent a summer in LA doing that. And then after I graduated, I moved back out here full time. And I had an assistant job at a production company that was run by a filmmaker, or it was his TV portion of his production company. And it was more drama focused, but it was a lot of good experience. And so I sort of became a creative executive over there. And then from there, moved to my current job, which I'm a producer for a comedy filmmaker. So I knew I wanted to get into comedy, and my previous job knew that, and they were lovely and helped me connect with some comedy filmmakers. And I landed at a company run by John Hamburg, who is known for sort of he wrote the Meet the Parents movies, he wrote Zoolander, he wrote and directed some other fun stuff. I Love You Man being my favorite among them. And so from there, I've been here for, 4 years producing and wanting to direct, but also sort of doing my regular job of producing his stuff. And the opportunity arose to direct an episode of The Unicorn and sort of kickstart that part of my career. And that's where we are.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, were you familiar with The Unicorn prior to working on the show? I know you said you worked with Josh Hamburg and he works on the show.
Yeah, so John directed the pilot, and so we, as John's producing partner, we get a lot of scripts incoming every development season for broadcast for him to direct. And so this was one that we both just responded to, and so he directed the pilot 2 seasons ago. It's on its second season. And, so I worked really closely with the crew on that, and then he continued and did a few more episodes this first season and a couple of the second season, especially with COVID. He decided to come back as we were shooting during COVID this past season to sort of keep as many variables straight as possible. So I knew the crew really well and the network and all those people. So I had a nice support system around me for this first directing thing.
Awesome. For those that haven't seen the series, what is The Unicorn about, and what was your episode about?
Yeah, so The Unicorn is about a single father who is widowed. We meet him about a year after his wife has passed, and he has a couple teenage daughters, and it's about how he goes back into the dating world as a single father. The idea for the show actually came from the two showrunners, Mike Schiff and Bill Martin, have a friend from college who is an editor and co-created the show with them, who this was based on his experience after his wife passed, raising 2 teenage daughters and being sort of a unicorn among the dating world, meaning he, has a job, is reliable, has all these things about him that he makes him so great, and he's available. And so women went nuts for him, is how the story goes. And so Wade is played by Walton Goggins, and he's a single father going into the dating world with the help of his friends around him. And my episode was in the 2nd season. He had been in a relationship for the majority of the 2nd season with a woman who we have met and fallen in love with, but due to circumstances sort of beyond everybody's control, she's now long distance. And so my episode was about sort of handling that relationship long distance.
What was the experience like on set directing this episode? I know you shot during COVID. What was that like?
It was, I was glad to have had a couple episodes under my belt not directing while John was directing, just to get used to the COVID guidelines. And so we're very fortunate that CBS put in a lot of time and effort and money into making sure we were safe. And there's a few COVID officers there to make sure that everybody stays distant and has masks on and shields in the appropriate areas, because obviously our actors have to unmask to act. And so it took a little getting used to have eyewear and masks and all that stuff, a lot of projecting. It's a little funny, you're not all in the same room necessarily, your camera operators or maybe remote or depending your setup. So it was a little bit of getting used to, but I had, like I said, a strong support system of crew and that I knew, and the cast was very supportive and encouraging, and it was a great experience in spite of all the COVID protocols. It was exciting. It was an exciting first episode.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It being an established series, like how much creative control were you allowed? Like, were there certain guidelines as such from the producers?
Yeah. Episodic directing is interesting because you do fall sort of within the parameters of the script. It's a very collaborative experience with the showrunners, and especially Mike and Bill I have a great relationship with them anyway, but even just if it's the first time they've worked with a director, are very collaborative showrunners and really just want to make the best version of an episode. So there's plenty of opportunities to weigh in both in the prep process and in set on sort of what you see the episode to look like and to feel like, and if you feel as though there's anything maybe you'd like to try out. But at the same time, you are ultimately shooting someone else's script and someone else's show. And that's maybe the difference with episodic compared to, if you were to do a pilot or a movie, the director sort of has an earlier cut versus later in a process on something else.
Gotcha. Were there any like big takeaways or lessons learned from directing? Like, what was the big takeaway from just the whole experience?
A big takeaway. I am a person who likes to be fully prepared. I think even just in the way of how I got to directing, I sort of had to go the version that made sense. I sort of had that sort of logical of biology to wildlife documentary to, I had to prepare each step of the way to get here. And in preparation, I found that was very helpful for directing. But at the end of the day, no matter how much I prepared, it doesn't mean that on the day, you're still going to have to throw it out the window and be ready for anything. My episode had dogs, and we had, which are difficult. And obviously there's kids. The actors are very talented, but then we had FaceTimes, which we did practically because I think they look much better than necessarily burning in. You can always kind of tell when it's like a fake FaceTime or Zoom. So there was challenges that you just have to, no matter how much you prepare, no matter how many times you test the Zoom call or the FaceTime, inevitably on the day when you're an hour behind or whatever the issue is, something's going to go wrong. And so it was a lesson for me of like prepare, and then be ready to throw it out the window.
I was watching the episode a little bit before we got on, and I saw the FaceTime, and I'm like, I wonder if that was practical. So that's really cool.
I mean, did you notice that it looked practical, or that's?
I couldn't tell. It looked so real. I wasn't sure if it was done in post or not. So it's really fascinating that it was actually practical. That's cool.
Yeah. There
So
was also a little script help in there too that she says, sorry, my connection's so bad or something. And you're like, oh, all right, well, they'll forgive us if the connection's bad.
it worked. I almost wonder, like, because I haven't been following the show, I was like, oh, I wonder if she's remote as a result of COVID. But that's really
She was actually just down the other end of a soundstage, and it made for a very long run between sets with like headphones, mask, shield, running between actors. So she was on set, but it just so happened that it was a Zoom setup. It didn't have any COVID impact.
very cool.
Yeah.
Any chance of directing another episode in the future?
Yeah, hopefully. We're, waiting to hear. The broadcast cycle has sort of a pattern of when they'll decide what will go next season. So we're waiting to hear if we'll get a third season on the Unicorn. But if not, whether it's the Unicorn or something else, I'd hope to continue directing. Yeah.
I hope it gets a third season because I love Walton Goggins.
He's even more lovely in person than you could imagine.
I love his character work. He's insane. I love him.
Yeah. Great guy.
Last question, just to bring it full circle, were there any like classes or programs or teachers, anything from your time in Burlington or BHS that sort of helped you or inspired you to come down this path or this career?
Yeah. I don't know necessarily directing. I do think, I forget what the class is where they make the retro. I did do that. Yeah, that was media production was a fun class to just sort of even be exposed to the idea of how things operated. But in terms of sort of getting here, it's more the teachers that let you be yourself and let your personality come out and, laugh. I've always wanted to make comedy, and it's the teachers that sort of embraced that I was like a weird kid who liked comedy and was into funny things. And I had a great, like Microsoft Office teacher, Mr. Phelan, who I don't think is there anymore. And it's just like, he was the best. And he just knew I was like a weird, funny kid and let me be my weird self. And I think that those kind of people who just sort of let you be instead of trying to operate inside of the constraints of something, were the best kind of teachers for me.
Awesome. I do remember Mr. Phelan a little bit.
Oh my God. Yeah. Microsoft Office.
Yeah.
He did Microsoft Office, which in hindsight was the most useful class I ever took in my entire life to learn how to use Excel.
It's amazing.
And then he taught another one. You took one freshman year and one senior year. And my senior year, Mrs. Polar was a teacher in my class. And we used to come in and talk about Saturday Night Live every morning. And I was going to go to New York one weekend. And she was like, oh, take Amy's cell phone. And just like gave me Amy Polar's cell phone number to text her. And I was like, Mrs. Polar, I don't really feel like I should have this.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Mrs. Polar. She was a great one. She let me be my weird self. Yeah, the teachers who just let you be yourself in high school and not sort of are like fixated on the idea of like the standardized test or like whatever the thing is and let you sort of figure out who you are were the teachers that really stuck with me.
Cool. I totally just thought of this question on the fly. Did you get any like feedback or response from anybody back home here? From the
yeah, I mean, my family still all lives in Burlington. I'm very close with my high school friends still. And so it was we had a fun little watch party together over Zoom, all my Burlington friends. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It feels like kind of weird to be like, it doesn't feel totally real that it was a TV show because I'm living in it right now. So it doesn't feel totally real. Like it's like a thing that people at home would have also seen.